I don't think that the problem is left. I don't think that that's the problem of the left-leaning voters, though. Kamala should have appealed to the voter base, but instead she focused on the center-right Republican base. That's 100% true. I mean, tomfoolery, as someone in the center, I think she focused too. You're so Tom. You're so fucking. There's no. You will not. You will sound like you took drugs if you try to make that argument. You would sound like you were smoking crack the second before those words left your mouth. That's what you would sound like if you tried to make that argument. It would sound bananas, Tom. It would sound bananas, Tom. Tom, I would do a fucking, what is it called? I would call the police on you and ask them to check on you. That's how crazy you would sound to me making that argument. I reviewed all of her interviews on stream, and the whole time I was annoyed with everything she was saying, and who she was appealing to. Tom, you're wrong. You're insane if you think that. How the fuck could she appeal to the center anymore, Tom? Dude, come in fucking my Discord and make this argument. There's no Tom. Okay, if you want to talk, come into my Discord. I'll be right back. Tomfoolery, you're calling in. It's the EconoBoi hour.
The EconoBoi hour was my favorite hour.
There we go. It's everyone's favorite hour, Tom.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm not like super staunch on this, I guess, but yeah, from everything that I watched, I felt like it was kind of I didn't feel like she did anything to kind of like appeal to Republicans, and you keep saying that as though she did. I know that
It's a
like
wild statement, Tom.
Okay, so early on in her campaign, she had a lot of like more progressive policies when it came to her plans for housing, when it came to like price gouging, when it came to obviously she did a pretty good job laying off like the culture war topics of like trans issues and things like that for the most part, but and then she did back off the stuff about the fracking and getting rid of guns, though she did still make some statements about guns as well. But yeah, those were almost all of those were at the beginning of her campaign, and it seemed like halfway through about mid-September she kind of laid off those things when she started doing more interviews. But outside of that, yeah, it seems like everything else was more just like regular Democrat positions, and I didn't see really much that was supposed to appeal to Republicans.
I just so incredibly disagree. Number one, the rhetoric and the tone of the campaign was an appeal to conservatives, right? Talking up the military, talking up freedom, liberty. This is a type of messaging that would appeal to a more conservative person. It's not that that's a bad strategy. I don't think that type of messaging hurts her with the Democratic base. But you can just tell that's part of the appeal to the attempt to appeal to the Republican base. And then when you combine that with like all these campaign events and all these surrogates of the campaign being Republicans and like so prominently featuring these people, and making them part of your campaign ads and things like that in your messaging campaigns, she made such a huge effort to try and get like Republicans to vote for her, and it just like it completely failed. Like it fucking totally didn't work, right?
I mean, I would agree with everything that you're saying, but I from my perspective, I'm somebody who is like from the very beginning, I am so morally opposed to somebody like Donald Trump that I would never even consider voting for him. But I felt like most of the things that she was doing were meant to be signs of Republicans that didn't agree with her policies, didn't agree with her being a Democrat, but they were also morally opposed to Donald Trump. And I felt like that was the point in all of those things. They weren't necessarily things that appealed to Republicans, but it was meant to show them, hey, lots of your leaders, lots of people who know Donald Trump well, lots of people who have been with him behind the scenes, these people are all very morally opposed to Donald Trump, and so you should be too. That's what I got from that. But yes, then when it came to actual policies and the way that she talked about those things, that was progressive.
I don't think that's true though. She was campaigning on tax cuts. Like she was out there saying like we're gonna lower taxes on the middle class and like we're gonna and a lot of the stuff like people made fun of her for adopting like Trump's policies. Oh, no tax on tips, whatever, right? Like there's like the rhetoric that she uses and the things she focuses on in her campaign to the extent that like she could legitimately say I would only raise taxes on people above 400,000 and pay for these programs because she was promising so little, but she was also promising some tax cuts. Like I don't think that this is definitely also an attempt to appeal to like a moderate sort of temperate base of the electorate, and it didn't work. Like it was so like it was a fucking it was a total failure, right? And she lost the suburbs this election. Like what more can I say? Like this she didn't win on conservative messaging towards these people.
I get possibly is lowering taxes for middle class and raising taxes for the upper brackets not part of progressive policies and not part of what progressives want?
Yeah, but people like that even Trump adopts that same anti-establishment stuff, right? Where like
He does, but he also
Republicans
cuts taxes for like the elites and like cuts taxes for middle class, then cuts it even more for corporations, cuts it more
I don't
for
think
upper brackets.
I don't think suburban voters want taxes to be cut for rich people. I don't think that's a thing that would help Democrats get
Like that's what I'm
Republicans.
saying. That's what I'm saying. That yes,
No, but
I'm
that's
saying
what
that
I'm
part.
saying. Because what I'm saying is that she attempts this message and it doesn't work.
You just said a second ago that she was talking about doing tax cuts except for like the rich people, and I'm saying yes, I think that that's part of progressive messaging is to say that you're going to cut taxes for middle class or lower brackets, but then raise taxes for upper brackets.
No, but you have to make the argument because you're saying she didn't attempt to appeal to conservatives with this message. And I'm saying no, like because you're arguing on the attempt. You're saying, oh no, like they didn't even really attempt to reach out to moderate Republican type voters. And what I'm saying is her running on a platform of cutting taxes for the middle and lower class is like absolutely a thing that is meant to appeal to the moderate kind of conservative suburban type voter. Like of course it is. Of course it is. Right?
Yeah. So okay. A couple of things there. One, I'm not saying that she didn't make any attempt. I'm saying that initially my statement was that I think that she was more so trying to appeal to progressives and that she didn't appeal to people more in the center much at all or make much of an effort for that. But again, when you're bringing up the tax policies, I'm saying that yes, this may be something that would appeal to Republicans, but I'm saying I don't know that I would take this and say, oh, this is strictly an appeal to Republicans or to right wingers and not to progressives. Whereas I'm saying I do think that is part of like what progressives want is lower taxes for lower brackets, higher taxes for higher brackets. Whereas Trump wants tax cuts across the board.
We have a totally different sense of this. I think I feel like she attempted in so many ways to appeal directly to Republicans. I understand what you're saying. Like some of these things could be multifaceted. We might say that center-left liberals are big fans of like deregulating zoning and stuff. First thing she mentions on her housing platform in her economic speech that she gave in her like first speech about the economy, she talks about housing. The first thing she says about housing is I'm going to cut all these wasteful regulations and things like that. Like this is an attempt. Again, this is a type of like sort of conservative, anti-regulatory state, sort of pro. Giving you back your money. Like that was even some phrasing that was used by Kamala, like give you back more of the money that you earn or whatever, right? Even though it's just a transfer program, right? And so,
yeah,
this type of rhetoric. I mean, these are attempts, and considering how skinny a platform she ran, like this is a major. She ran. This was like the skinniest, most narrow platform that frankly, I think I've seen the Democrats run on in my whole life, in 20 years. Obama had a much more expansive platform and second-term platform. You could say the same thing for Hillary Clinton, and you could certainly say that about Joe Biden. But like, the simplicity and like the conservative messaging of lowering taxes and cutting regulation, I just feel like that's a genuine attempt to reach out to, centrists and like your moderates.
Okay. But yeah, then on top of that, she seemed to lose a lot of Jewish voters with the way that she talked about like trying to settle things, and the way that she talked about Palestinians and Gaza, which I generally like am in favor of, but I do think
How did
that
she did not lose Jewish voters. She
this
gets
is not that. No,
80% of the
just to be
Jewish vote.
clear, just to be clear, I don't mean that she actually lost all Jewish voters. What I mean is, from what I understand, compared to Joe Biden, she had a good, I think, like almost 10% lower than what Joe Biden had, according to polling going in. So I haven't checked if there's data on that now. I haven't seen that, but yeah, from what I
mean,
saw going in,
sure. She doesn't lose Jewish voters by an amount that would even come close to being. It wouldn't make any difference in this election, I don't think.
sorry,
Like, I
that's
don't
not
think
my
that's.
argument. I'm not saying that she's losing Jewish voters and now she lost the election. I'm saying that part of what like conservatives would make a big deal about is whether or not you are appealing to like more Jewish or Israel types
Oh,
of
Israel and shit.
wants. Yes, and so I'm saying that the ways that she talked about Gaza and the way that she talked about Palestine, this would appeal a lot more to progressives. And I think that, again, I didn't have an issue with what it was she was saying specifically, but I do think that it was going to lose a lot more like center right people or center left people.
Yeah, but I mean, sure, but like at that point, it's almost like at a certain point, well, you're not going to just not be a Democrat, like, because on one hand, even if we take what you're saying to be true, but we'd have to agree. I think you said you would agree. This was such a narrow, piddling, tiny little platform that, like, what the hell are are the Democrats? Do they have to just like be Republicans? You know what I mean? Like, at a certain point, you can't just compromise on every value because you think it might hurt you with moderates. You're not a Republican. You have to appeal to your own base of voters, I think, before you start to appeal to your centrists and your moderates, right? You kind of have to start there. And it just seems to me like, I don't know what, maybe you would agree. You would just say that maybe both are big problems. I just don't think losing the centrist vote is a big problem. I think the biggest problem this election for the Democrats was their backs against the wall with inflation, and they don't run nearly an aggressive enough or progressive enough platform to inspire Democrats to come out and vote. Like 13 million Biden voters just didn't fucking vote this election. Like that's a crazy drop off.
Yeah, I don't know. The way that I see it is pretty much that I think progressives should be cut off enough to Donald Trump and feel like he is a big enough threat to where anybody who is undecided is somebody who is willing to consider Donald Trump still. And so those are the people that you want to pull over.
But that's
and
clear. That clearly is not the case.
What is that?
That's
What does
clearly
that mean?
not true. We had 13 million people who voted for Biden just didn't vote in 13 million. That's a
Right.
huge number.
Right, correct. That's what I'm saying. Is that I that's the thinking that I would have. But obviously, a lot of progressives just chose not to vote and use that. But yeah, for me, like I feel like this is and maybe this is like every election ever in everybody's life. I don't know, but I feel like yes, Donald Trump, after his attempted coup, after the insurrection, after getting 80 something felonies this time, I feel like this is an important enough election to where like it is important to for Democrats to appeal to those centrist voters, get them over to get the votes, and that progressives should be just more on board with defeating Donald Trump. And it is kind of disappointing that that's not the priority here. And so that's why I felt like, yes, that I thought that would be the priority, and I thought that that's why she should have continued to appeal to people in the center.
Okay, so, but you're saying that that's not the case in hindsight.
Yeah, obviously not. Obviously not.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, like yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, of course, because like I'm not saying like um I'm saying purely retrospectively that that's the case. Now, to be fair, I was sounding the alarms on this and saying the way that they're moderating Tim Walz. Look, I mean, this like tiny little campaign that this tiny little platform that they're running. You know, this is a problem. Like, I think that this doesn't feel right. And that turned out to be a much bigger deal than I thought it would be as well. But you know,
Well, I
man,
think
I
the
feel
problem is it's kind of picking a side because, like as I said, they did seem to kind of like obviously you have examples that you consider to be appealing to the center. I have a bunch of examples that I consider to be appealing to progressives. And yeah, it sounds like they weren't actually willing to kind of like pick a group that they were willing to appeal to. Whereas, like, currently, the way I feel looking back at it is thinking, damn, if they had really just like gone in on these
just
undecided
go all
voters
in. Yeah.
and moderates and gotten all of them, we would have replaced all of these progressives that chose not to vote.
Just be
And
fucking yourself. Just be Democrats. Just run a fucking normal ass Democratic. We're gonna raise fucking taxes and offer services and fucking expand welfare and minimum wage and shit like that. Just run a fucking, real ass platform,
I mean,
Um
according to the polling, I mean, I said, yes, I said, I think 2 to 3 weeks ago that there was almost no way she was going to win, based on the polling, because in all of pretty much across the United States, but especially in all of the swing states, she just had like a pretty sharp downturn from the middle of September and was dropping at such a rate that, like, if we had had the election a week ago, she may have won. But now, like, yes, it was just a little bit too late. And I think that the
polling barely moved, though. The polling barely moved between now and
not in the swing states.
month.
I mean, when we say barely, sure, like within the margin of error. But the problem is that when we're looking at aggregates, she's holding on to a very consistent 3-point lead in almost all of these states, and then except for two of the.
You're saying in some of the swing states.
I'm saying except for two of the swing states, so there's 6 of them. Out of the 6, 4 of them she held onto a 3-point lead consistently, like had a very strong hold on that. It wasn't up and down. It was 3-point plus for a while, even 4 points at some points, and then all of them mid-September she drops off. And this is right around the same time where she starts going and doing a lot more interviews, and she's talking a lot more. She's getting a bit more pushback from the reporters. And I think that this is like a lot of people saw that, one, yes, her inability to kind of answer questions and give good answers, which she had. There were so many great fucking answers that she could have given to all of these questions that was really annoying that she didn't give them. But 2, that yes, I did feel like in those interviews she was kind of leaning more towards kind of denying whether or not she was doing more far left stuff instead of like making sense of it. And then when she does talk, she is kind of appealing to the more progressive base, like saying like, well, Kamala, I'm not doing fracking, Kamala, but then yes, we should get rid of some of these guns, right?
Yeah, look, Kamala Kamala is obviously not an optimal candidate. I mean, people knew that in the moment, right? Like, she became the presidential candidate because she was the vice president, because it just like made sense for a number of logistical reasons. And that she's obviously wasn't the strongest, like theoretical choice that the Democrats could have put forward. That's obviously true. I mean, it's very clearly true in hindsight. Run anybody just to see what would happen, I guess, at this point, given this result. But I think that it's just unfortunately the case that I just think you're going to see Democrats really debate that, Well,
like, I mean, I thought she was a horrible candidate. I thought that, like, and I think that I was wrong now, but at the time I thought that this was like the worst choice and it would almost be better to keep Biden at the time. But yeah, but at the time when I was arguing this, it seemed to be almost all progressives who were saying, no, this is who we wanted. Like, we wanted Kamala. She is like one of the most progressive candidates who could actually run and who could possibly win. And so that's who we want. And And so yeah, that's all I was hearing
Yeah.
from progressives.
Well, I mean, that's what I just think there's going to be a real debate, and I just really hope. Look, I mean, the progressive didn't win. They didn't win that war in a lot of respects, I guess. But in general, the debate in going forward, it has to be like, what is the type of progressive message that we should pick, and if we should pick that progressive message, because all these moderates, I mean, I can't imagine it, but some of their takeaways is probably going to be like, oh yeah, it turns out we need to be even more moderate. Like you like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I mean, that was
that
my
would be
takeaway from
crazy.
2020. I don't know. I felt like going into the 2020 election, we have like 20 candidates on stage. All of them are trying to out progressive each other. And then there's Joe Biden
Gays?
standing there and he's like, yeah, like, fuck that shit. I'm still just your regular old Democrat, still here, just doing the same old thing. And he won by a ridiculous margin. None of them ever had a chance against Joe Biden. And so, yes, I felt like after the 2020 election, that was the message. Even though he's still one of the more progressive presidents we've ever had, he was still kind of like sending a message that, yes, this is like a slow incremental process towards progressivism. This is not like we're jumping from, Joe Biden to AOC or Bernie Sanders or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I guess in hindsight, it's not that that's an illogical thing to think, given how close 2020 was, but no, I mean, I think in hindsight, it has to tilt towards the progressives. I mean, I think um, in terms of like the message that we want to go with moving forward, like I just think, and it doesn't have to be exactly like Bernie's platform in 2020, but a substantially more progressive message just seems like so the right thing to do. And we'll see, I guess, what that looks like. I mean, again, if Trump does what he says he's going to do, the Democrats are literally going to institute fucking socialism by the time the next election rolls around. They're going to get like 70 senators in the Senate. It's going to be ridiculous. Like it'll actually be preposterous. I mean, do you disagree? Like, almost certainly the economy would be completely fucked if Trump actually did his platform.
Oh, no, I
And by
don't disagree at all.
2028, people are going to be fucking rioting in the fucking streets, Like,
Yeah, no,
holy
I don't
shit.
disagree at all. I mean, I kept trying to say to my chat today, like, I don't know why any of you ever voted for Trump this time when after the last election in 2020, you guys were all furious with him. You guys were all sick of him. You were like ready for him to be gone. And then now you're all just right back on the Trump train again. It doesn't make sense to me, but yeah, this is going to be disastrous, and Democrats are going to go right back to what it was they were doing through his 2016 to 2020 campaign or presidency, where they're going to go right back to trying to impeach him over and over, doing a bunch of investigations. He's going to continue committing a bunch of crimes and continue getting in trouble for it. And he's just going to say, I didn't do it. And they're
keep
all
going
gonna...
after him, but don't forget the fucking actual platform that, the actual positive messaging, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think going after his crimes and stuff, that's always a good thing to do. But obviously, we can't let that be the only thing. Now, I think that the Democrats did a pretty good job of actually not doing that in their messaging in the general election. Like, you saw Kamala kind of poke him about being a felon every now and then, but, you didn't really see Kamala making this, like, very, like, negative moral case. It's like, look, Trump's a felon.
That was, again, part of my issue.
You can't
I felt like
vote
she
for
should
a
have.
felon.
I felt like she should have. That was part of my issues with her interviews, is that like Trump will get asked a question about like tariffs and he'll talk for 5 minutes about how Kamala is a Marxist and a communist and all of this crap, like, and won't even answer the question. I felt like, yes, if she was going to, what she should have done is, yes, take the questions and then talk about not only why she would do a good job, but why Trump would do a horrible job at that, and spend most of the question answering why Trump is not the answer to that question. And yeah, I felt like she didn't really ever even mention him through most of the interviews, except for maybe the last one against Fox. She was a little bit better with this, but through most of the interviews, yes, I felt like she should have been doing exactly what it was that Trump was doing, which is pointing out that the other person is not the answer to this.
Well, yeah, you have to. I mean, don't get me wrong. You have to do both. I'm just saying that I don't think, because it sounded like originally what you were saying was like we can't fixate too hard on Trump, right? And like that's not, you don't want to run a whole campaign on how bad Trump is, because you need a proactive, positive message as well. However, at the same time that you need a proactive, positive message, you also need to attack the guy. But I think that she struck that actual balance of messaging decently well. However, it was the positive messaging that could have been greatly improved. And so there you go. Unlearning
Yeah, I guess
economics. He just got Wisconsin. That's it. I mean, we knew he had Wisconsin hours ago. Huey. It's been clear that he's going to win this whole time. The last 3 hours, it's been clear that he's going to win.
Yeah, I mean,
Anti-felon doesn't work because most people don't have faith in our institutions. Yeah, you could argue that. You could argue that just in general is not that strong of an attack. Anyway, Tom, any other stuff you wanted to talk about? But yeah, I think we actually end up agreeing. It sounds like.
Okay. Well, I mean, I wanted to ask one more time. Like, what you're saying are things that I agree, like, optically appeal to Republicans, but I wouldn't call any of these things like Republican-esque or conservative type policies that she was pushing. These are just things that could optically appeal to them, but I did feel like there was a lot of things that would appeal to progressives, and I'm sure as a progressive, it's not as noticeable for you as somebody who's, for me, I'm not a progressive, and so for me, it all kind of sticks out a little bit more, where, yeah, I'm sitting there just kind of scratching my head a lot of times.
Yeah. No, I understand where you're coming from. I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons to learn. I mean, we'll see if the Democrats learn them. There's a serious anti-progressive bias, obviously amongst the leadership, unfortunately, and amongst the donor base. So that's the big challenge, I guess, that progressives have in general within the Democratic Party. But
I mean, I'm not decided.
Anyway.
I still, like, that's my, current, like, initial reaction right now. I'm still ready to kind of get better analysis and better polling on what it was that kind of hurt Kamala in this election. But that is, like, yes, my initial thoughts right after it just happened is, yeah, my first idea is that progressives probably did not vote here, and we're kind of holding out to use their votes as some sort of leveraging power going forward, so that hopefully the platform moves farther towards progressives in the future. And if that's the case, I'm kind of pissed off about it, but we'll have to take that into consideration going forward, I guess.
That's right. All right, talk to you later, Tom. It was good talking.
All right, appreciate it. Later, man.
Yeah, I mean, guys, yeah, people are mentioning Brianna. I don't know what Brianna Wu has said about this. Look, if she's on I will, like, that's such an insane opinion to think that the lesson that the Democrats need to learn is to go more moderate. That is legitimately an insane mess. That is a preposterously bad takeaway from this election.